Well, we had over 30 people sign up, so I'm gonna give it like another 2 minutes to see if other people are just waking up early.
Well, I
And
am
we'll
tuning in
do.
from Dublin and it's 5 p.m. here. So this is a very convenient Sunday time for me,
Oh,
you know.
good. Okay.
What
Yes.
time is it where you are?
It is 9 a.m. So I am in
Right.
Oregon in the United States. So
Uh-huh. Yeah.
it
9
is.
a.m. on a winter Sunday morning is tough, man.
Yes, it is. There is snow covering the ground. We're I'm hopefully going to have internet access throughout this whole meeting. Yeah. Hi, Alicia. Welcome. I was just saying I'm going to give it a few more minutes. I want to respect your time, but I know that for some people, just timing wise, might be joining us a little bit late. But that's okay. If we're a small group, you get your questions answered. uh, so, uh, so there we go. Hi, Jared. I'm going to give it one more minute. I want to respect the time of everybody that's here. But I was saying we did have over 30 people sign up, so I don't want people to miss things. But it is early on a Sunday morning for me. I don't know what it's like for everybody else. So I guess while we're waiting for people, a few housekeeping things. My internet seems super stable right now. We are in the midst of a snow and ice storm. So if we do get disconnected, I would say please hang on for about 5-10 minutes, see if I can reconnect us. If not, then as I said in the email I sent out, I will, either give you the opportunity to join us Tuesday or Wednesday, or perhaps redo it on a Sunday. We'll do our best. Other housekeeping, I am recording so that I can give this recording to the people who could not show up. Other housekeeping, if you look at the bottom of your screen right next to the red telephone icon, there are 3 vertical dots. Those are your friends. If you click on those 3 vertical dots, you can change the layout of your screen. So say I'm sharing and I'm too small for you. You can change the layout so that it has a spotlight view. Also, if it is helpful for you, under those 3 dots, there is an option to turn on closed captioning if it's helpful to read along with what we're talking about. I think it's easiest if you're not talking to keep yourself muted just so we don't get any background noise. However, I will attempt to monitor the chat. Sometimes it's difficult for me, especially if I'm sharing my screen with a slideshow, to do the slideshow, speak, and monitor the chat. So especially if we stay a small group like this, feel free to unmute yourself, interrupt me, say, hey, Nicole, this is, a question I have, or, your screen's not showing properly, whatever it is that you want to chime in with. All right, I am going to start sharing my screen. So again, if nothing is showing up for you, feel free to let me know. Hopefully you are in the right place. This is our nature-based fine motor development workshop. And let's see. There we go. So I think it's important always to acknowledge our human connection to nature and to the land. And so before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that I am speaking to you from the traditional unceded lands of the Chinookan, Kalapuyan, Clascani, and Athabascan people. And we are in a virtual space. So we're all coming from different lands. So I encourage you to take a moment to reflect. If you know about the Indigenous people with claims to the land that you're on, take a moment to reflect on that. You can do it in your own head. You can add it to the chat, whatever moves you. If you do not know about the Indigenous people with claims to your land, there are a number of interactive maps where you can do some research. You don't have to do it right now, but there is a website here where you can do the research. All right, so here's what we're going to get into today. I'm going to let you know a little bit about me, and I want to find out a little bit about you. And then after we see where we're coming from and what we want to get out of today, I'm going to do a little background information on fine motor skills and a framework for how we're going to plan for teaching those skills to preschoolers. I'm going to go through with a practical example using feathers of a number of different practical ideas of provocations you might want to use in your setting. And then I'm going to give you some time. Hopefully you have your sorry, I just took a look at the chat, like I said, or to see if people are coming in. You have your own materials. You have a little bit of practice seeing what you can plan. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a Bringing Nature Inside course, because this is kind of a preview of a course that will be starting at the end of January that I'll be offering. And then I'll give you some time to ask questions either about our workshop today or about the upcoming course. Okay. So this is a little bit about me. I have 30 years of experience now in the early childhood field. I started out as a public school kindergarten and first grade teacher. When one of the public schools that I was working at opened an Even Start program, which is similar to Head Start in that it's a publicly funded preschool program for low-income families. The difference is that Even Start follows the children 0 to 8 instead of just preschool. When my school that I was working at opened that program, I moved to teach preschool. I have also had experience as a museum educator doing outreach arts programs for Head Start and other community organizations. About 14 years ago, I founded Wildwood Nature School, which was originally not entirely outdoors. I never intended to start a nature forest school. I knew that I wanted my program to be child-led. I knew that I wanted it to be hands-on. But I just kind of lucked into a setting, which was a converted barn on the edge of 364 acres of temperate rainforest that we had access to also a 30-mile trail that snaked through that forest, just from the backyard of behind the barn. And so I knew that I couldn't let that setting get away, that I had to take advantage of everything that it was offering to the children. And we started out sort of half of our time indoors and half of our time outdoors, because that's what I thought I could handle at the time. When COVID hit, as a COVID precaution, we transitioned to entirely outdoors. And it was such a success that we have not gone back, and we don't plan to go back. And so now we are an entirely outdoor forest school. I say this because I don't know yet about your settings. And I want to emphasize that it's not an all or nothing proposition. You can be nature-based and take baby steps and do what is comfortable, and add more as you and the children are comfortable with it. So now you've learned a little bit about me. I would like to learn a little bit about you. You don't have to answer all of these questions. You know, what brings you to this session? What motivated you to join us today? What is your setting like? How much nature-based teaching do you already do? What's the age of the children you teach? What are some challenges? And you can add it to the chat. You can, I think we are still a relatively small group, so you can unmute yourself and tell us, and I'm going to try to figure out how I access the chat with everybody here. Okay, so I would say please unmute yourself, because as of right now, I cannot access the chat with my screen share.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Alita. The children know me as Ali. I am based in Dublin, and I work in a community nursery. We call it creche here, but it's all the way to preschoolers. So I work with the preschoolers, and they're between 3 and 5 years old. So we got them before they move into the school setting. And we have a big garden that has trees, like a tiny hill, the kids call it, when it's just like a mound with grass on it, and some natural materials, but not a lot. And for me, the biggest challenge would be to try to have all the other teachers on board with having more natural materials and ditch the plastic as much as possible, and how important it is to have them outside, like especially in the winter. I'm the only teacher that takes them outside for most of the, the only, but it's so cool, but it's so, like there's a mind, no, they're gonna get sick, or all those things. And I fight with that every day. Like I try to, okay, I'll go, well, 20 minutes only, okay. Like, can I take half of the group? So that's a big challenge for me. So if I can incorporate a bit of like benefits and how much they learn when they're outside, then maybe that's another way of getting into the teachers and convincing them.
Yes, yes, that's a common problem, getting everybody else in the school on board with it. And Jared, thank you. I did figure out how to access the chat. And so, yes, okay, so you are mostly outside except for eating and a little indoor playtime. We did add a covered area for eating, because soggy food is definitely definitely a challenge. So Alicia, if you want to chime in either in the chat or unmute yourself, if not, that is fine too. We are going to honor everybody's ways of interacting with our presentation today. All right, so let's kind of get into the nitty gritty here. So I always find it helpful when I'm thinking about doing something with children to really break down what are we talking about when we talk about fine motor skill. And I am going to say at the outset that fine motor skill is any small muscles. So while I'm talking right now, right, the small muscles in my mouth, but we are going to focus on your arm, your hand, your wrist. And I think that when we teachers think about fine motor, we tend to think about writing, and we tend to think about self-help skills, and we tend to think about the pincer grasp. And those are all part of fine motor skill. A pincer grasp where you're touching the thumb to the finger, that's involved in holding a pencil, that's involved in buttoning, in zipping, is incredibly important. But there are other pieces of fine motor skill that we want to keep in mind if we are wanting to teach them to children. And one of those things is wrist stability. So think about if you're holding a racket or a hammer, you want everything to go straight up and down. You don't want your wrist to be flapping all over the place because then it becomes dangerous. And so children are using wrist stability when they're wiping a surface, when they're pounding, when they're, say, turning a key in a lock. This is easier to practice when you're working on a vertical surface as opposed to a horizontal surface where perhaps the table is helping you keep your wrist stable. Hand-eye coordination is another piece of fine motor skill. Can you match what your eye is seeing to what you want your fingers to do? And children are going to use that when they're threading, when they're drawing, when they're lacing. There is a point of fine motor that is hand strength. So when you are squeezing something, do children know that they need a different amount of pressure when they are squeezing Play-Doh as opposed to clay? What happens if they squeeze those plastic toys too hard? And can they moderate their strength to match the material? Grasp and release is another part of building fine motor skills. So, you think of that when you are building a tall tower, stacking things on top of each other, using a shape sorter to place an object in. And again, you are going to adapt what you're doing to the shape and the texture of whatever objects you're holding. Bilateral coordination is another fine motor skill, and that's often when you're thinking about using both hands at the same time. So say you're tying your shoelaces. Maybe you're using scissors and you're holding the paper at the same time. You also, it's a common thing in early childhood that we talk about crossing the midline, right? Can you cross your arms and still use them? So I hope as we are going through these items that you've noticed a couple of things, that you've keyed in on the idea that just like anything else that we do in early childhood, these are not discrete skills. Right? Very often you're going to be using your pincer grasp in conjunction with wrist stability. Very few times are you going to say, well, I'm going to have hand-eye coordination, but I'm not going to use my hand in any other way. Because we always want to have a whole, even though we want to be aware of the separate pieces, we also want to have a holistic approach to how we are teaching these items. I hope that you've also realized that, it's not just about writing, that these are foundational skills to pretty much every other academic area. So if you want children, say, to do counting with one-to-one matching, where they are lining up objects and then tracking them with their fingers, that requires fine motor skill. Also, talking about crossing the midline. So reading requires very many of these skills. It requires hand-eye coordination as you are tracking the words. If children are reading and writing in English, they are going from left to right and they are crossing the midline. Also, I want us to take a strength versus deficit model of fine motor skills, and that oftentimes you can use one skill that children are strong at to get into something that they might need help with. So for example, this past fall when I had the parent-teacher conferences, one mom was actually very surprised when I said, your child struggles with fine motor skills, because she was having a hard time thinking about the difference between gross motor skills and fine motor skills. And I was saying, if your child wants to say, open a bag of their gummy snacks that you put in their lunch, they have trouble because that requires a pincer grasp. That requires, two hands working together. They had a very hard time holding scissors or trying to figure out how to pick up the scissors, right? Just coordinating, how am I going to pick this up or how am I going to pick up a pencil? So what we talked about, Mom and I, was using something that they are good at, bilateral coordination, which can cross over into gross motor skills to help their fine motor skills. So if the child is picking up a pencil or picking up scissors, what we said was have them actually pick up the pencil, the scissors with their non-dominant hand, and then have their dominant hand ready. So have that pincer grasp ready, and they're going to place the tool into their dominant hand. And you think it took about a week of us doing this method where it clicked for the child. So you want to take a look at how we can use one skill to help other skills. So another piece that I'm going to put in here that's very important to me in a child-led program is getting beyond the cute activity planning to what really is teaching. And so when we talk about child-led teaching, yes, it could be that the child is really deciding where their learning is going. But I think a lot of it sometimes is the child doesn't know what the next step is because they're 3. And so our job as a teacher, if we are truly being child-led, is we can decide on what we're introducing to the children based on what we've observed. So have we observed what the children's needs are, what their interests are? So that could be that we've watched them struggling with scissors, or we've watched them struggling with a pencil. Or maybe it could be that the child's, we've observed, everybody's into making booby traps right now, and they're all trying to tie knots. And so that could be an interest that they've developed because of something else, that a skill would help them in their booby trap tying. And so you're going to kind of observe, where are they? Maybe they have a certain schema that they're in right now that you've observed. Here's how we can move that one step further. And then you have a sheet that you either printed out or have available, hopefully. If not, no big deal, that you're going to use that sheet to say, well, what exactly is holding them back? What do they need to work on? Is it pincer grasp, or is it hand strength? And then based on the children's interests, based on the materials that you have, the natural materials that you have available, you're going to create a provocation that might guide the children in that direction. Now, here's the piece of child-led learning, that you are not going to force a child to say, here, everybody, we are all going to sit with a shoe and tie, 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 right? You have set up something thoughtfully that hopefully guides the children in the right direction, but you are going to be flexible about having children interact with those materials in a way that makes sense to them. You're going to allow for their ideas. You're going to allow for the fact that maybe you set up this provocation because, Julian and Sarah were, building booby traps and you wanted them to have practice tying, and other children may get something out of it. They may get the same things out of it. They may ignore the activity altogether. They may turn it into an art project, and you want to be flexible enough that you're allowing for children's ideas. All right, so I am going to, at this point, stop the share so that you can just see me here. And what I want to do is I want to take you through some ideas, some provocations you're never going to go through that framework that I gave you and go through it line by line and fill it out. What you really want to do is fill out one row at a time. I see that, Jared. I see that. What we do for fine motor with gloves here is that that's actually a point to work on something other than the pincer grasp, to work on ability, to work on something that doesn't require fingers but is a greater arm bilateral coordination. We do sometimes talk to the children about take your glove off for 30 seconds, put it back on, take it off, put it back on. And they get pretty good at, paying attention to their body needs. It does depend on your climate. We never drop much below 30 here, so we can take those breaks with the gloves in and off. All right, so what I have a lot of, because we have chickens here at Wildwood Nature School, and the children love in the spring collecting the feathers when the chickens molt. And so I have a lot of feathers. So I am just going to take us through that framework of how you might do some ideas for pincer grasp, some ideas for wrist stability, etc., using the single material that we have. So let's say that I decided that the children do need some help with a pincer grasp. So I'm going to tilt my screen a little bit so that you can see what I might have then is feathers just kind of spread out with obviously a container, and the children can take their beaks and grasp the feathers and collect them for whatever the birds would be collecting the feathers for. Right? That's one way of using a pincer grasp to collect feathers. Also, what I've learned over the years is that painting is the same grasp as drawing. Right, so you're holding a paintbrush the same way that you're holding a pencil. The advantage to the feathers is that they are small, and the smaller an object is, the less easy it is, and the lighter it is, the less easy it is to do a club grip and actually get anything done. So you can paint with this tip of the feathers. They can turn the feather around and paint with it. They can blot with it. and they are practicing that pincer grasp. So let's say that instead what you found was that they needed to work on wrist stability. And so what I have here is you're going to move it to a vertical surface. So you can have that same painting activity. We often hang things from tree branches, and then children can paint on a vertical surface. Now, obviously, your easel inside your classroom works the same purpose. You can, if you're outside, spread out cushions, pillows on the ground, place their whatever they're making on the ground in front of them so that they are lying down to paint. You can tape your paper to the underside of a table, and then they're lying on their back to paint. And all of those different surfaces and different motions are practicing wrist stability because you need to adjust for where the paper is. I also, well, I actually didn't discover this. A child discovered this many, many years ago, that leaves stick to a flannel board. And so when I was thinking about using feathers, I thought, well, I wonder if the feathers will stick to a flannel board. And some of them do, and some of them don't. It really depends on the kind of feathers you have. But the children can create designs on the flannel board with their feathers. I think right now the feathers are more sticking to my fingers. Or you can always attach contact paper to your easel. So the sticky part is sticking out. And that's another way that children can stick the feathers and create designs on the easel. I always am looking for ways that I can use my easel for something other than painting. Right, so let's say that what your children need to work on is hand-eye coordination. You can bring in non-natural materials. So these are plastic. These are plastic, but I'm going to use them in conjunction. My plastic beads, I'm going to use them in conjunction with my feathers to thread the beads onto the feathers for some fine motor practice. I can also take just a colander, and the children can poke the feathers into the holes of the colander. So it's always okay to mix your natural materials with whatever else you have available in the classroom. This is floral foam, and again, those tips of the feathers fit right into the floral foam. If you don't have floral foam, you know, it works really well. Pool noodles. So you can buy a pool noodle. They're at the dollar store here. And, you know, same thing. Children can create their designs. I always enjoy also, you know, when children can do artwork in 3 dimensions rather than just a flat surface. If you want to practice hand strength, for me, you know, that hand strength is always about squeezing the glue. And a lot of children have a lot of trouble squeezing the glue. So I would simply set out the feathers as a collage material, and the children can squeeze the glue onto their paper, press their feathers into their paper. You can also practice cutting, right? Children can just cut out pieces of the feathers, right? They can cut a pattern, they can cut off pieces just to make that little confetti. and watch the feathers float. There's the advantage to being outside if you're doing that type of messy activity, because they are going to blow everywhere. If I were doing it inside, I would have children cut over a tray or some type of container, hopefully to contain the mess a bit so that, I'm not picking them up all by hand or by vacuum afterwards. So for grasp and release, my children love filling things. So I would just have a variety of containers that they can fill with the feathers that have different ways of opening the container. So they are practicing how they are opening it, placing the items in. Maybe they have something that they have to unscrew. Maybe if I want to make it even more exciting, maybe I add some ribbon and they can, tie up a little pretend packages for their friends, deliver them, and then put them back in our dramatic play area for somebody else to fill and gift. You can also use a tube and tongs, and this is where I said it's not discrete skills, right? You're practicing the pincer grasp, you're practicing grasp and release, and they can let the feathers drop down into a container or a tray or nothing through the tube. Now for that bilateral coordination, that's also, like I said, non-discrete skills. So what we just did with the tubes, if they are having to hold the tube in one hand and drop the feathers with the other hand, that's another bilateral coordination activity. So anytime they're holding an object while threading another object, so these are two pieces of burlap that I'm going to use the holes in the burlap to stick the feathers through the holes, and kind of a threading embroidery type of task that connects the burlap. If you don't have burlap, that's okay. This is a little bag that my oranges came in. It also has those holes, and I just cut the bag into little pieces, and the same thing. Thread it through the holes. They can go in and out as many times as they want. They can add more feathers if they would like to. All right, so I kind of went through that chart with the material that I have. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of practice time with whatever material you were able to bring today. I guess I should say, either show of hands or in the chat, were you able to bring material today for practice? And what do you have? Okay, good. We have some shells. I can't see what those are. Oh, those are okay. Rocks, I got it. Okay. Yeah, tiny is good for fine motor. So I want to just take, 5 or 10 minutes for you to practice going through at least one of those rows and see what ideas you can come up with for using your materials. We can start now. I'm still going to talk, or you can certainly, if you have a question for the rest of the group, like if you are stuck for ideas, you could say, I have some shells, what do people suggest I could use for wrist stabilization? Or do other people have some ideas for what we can do with gloves on outside in the winter? Feel free to use us all in this time and take a little bit of practice. I always enjoy this time because Usually when we share afterwards, I get some great ideas that I never thought of and new things that I can incorporate into my preschool program. So it's a little bit selfish of me. So Jared asked if I think manipulating slightly bigger objects with gloves on would be good for fine motor. Yes, I do. I think you can find river rocks uh, as opposed to pebbles, right? And then children can grasp that with mittens on, or and then you're practicing, right, that appropriate hand strength. You can tie it with my children are very into construction vehicles right now, so having river rocks and construction vehicles where they can dump, right, dump and fill, right, that is a fine motor practice. That is eye hand coordination. The children have realized that uh, they can push those rocks with the construction vehicles. And so, yes, I do think you can do what you can do. And like I said, if you think beyond pincer grasp, there are other fine motor skills that you can practice. And then in the spring, in the summer, go heavy on the pincer grasp if we've already got all of the other pieces down. Yes, I chose feathers. For feathers would be difficult with gloves on because it does require really a pincer grasp, and it does require a certain amount of strength. I chose feathers for this workshop because it felt a little bit more unusual, I think, if I'm going to give people ideas that maybe they're not doing in their own program yet, and wanted to give you something you hadn't thought about. I thought feathers would be a different type of material. And yes, beading is always a huge hit. What I struggle with the beading is the children always want to take all of their creations home. So we have a 1 creation per day rule here, because the beads are consumable, not renewable material. And so we usually say you can choose one thing that you made to take home. Children have found a way around it, though, in that they sometimes will gift it to a friend, right? So I'm taking this one home, but I'm giving this one to Callie, and she's taking that one home. Um, so, they're always creative about how they interact with your materials. Before we move on, does anybody want to share a really good idea that they came up with using their materials, again, in the chat, or unmute yourself for a small group, and let us know? All right. Well, that's okay. If you want to share later, and you get moved later, go ahead. I'm going to go back to my slideshow because, like I said, this workshop was just a little preview of our Bringing Nature Inside course that I will be starting at the end of January. What it consists of are 5 self-paced modules, which would be kind of the slideshow portion of what we did today. And those are just set up where you access them on the website, go through it at your own pace. We're kind of set up so that the course will take a month, but if it takes you a year, that is quite okay. We are all busy. We all are teaching at the same time, and I understand that. Each self-paced module has a live session connected to it. And that would be kind of, when I left the slideshow and kind of demonstrated for you and gave you a little bit of practice time. Again, I know we're busy, so, it's set up to go through the course rather slowly, to do 1 per week. If you can't make the live session, just like we did today, it will be recorded so that you can access it at another time. I want to make sure that I reach the most people who can attend live. So I don't have the schedule set up yet for that. If you sign up, you get a survey, and one of the survey questions is, what time zone are you in and when are you available for live sessions? And I will do the best I can to match the live sessions to when the most people can come. That might mean that it's a different day or a different time each week, just to give everybody a chance to attend. But that schedule will be set up and announced at the very beginning of the course. So it's not like the day before I say, guess what, we're going live tomorrow. And they will all be recorded. There's also a workbook page that comes with each module, so that if you think about this as kind of, a college course, you would have your lecture, right? The self-paced module, your lab session, and then your individual practice. I will be able to give you a 6-hour certificate of completion. What you're able to do with that certificate, is going to be up to your individual state licensing agency. The course is going to officially start January 29th. That's when you'll be able to access the self-paced modules. But again, you can start at any date that works for you. This is my first time doing a longer term course. And so I really there's a low introductory price. If I do this course again, it's never going to be this price again, because I want a lot of people to be able to participate, because I want feedback. This is, again, me being selfish. I want to know, how is this working? You're kind of be my beta testers. But in exchange, you would also have access to any future updates and changes. You kind of have lifetime access to the course. Lifetime is interesting because it's really my lifetime, really for as long as I'm doing Wildwood teaching and have the courses available. There is a refund policy, so I am happy to give you a full refund if you've given an actual attempt to engage with us and learn. And so, within 14 days of your course purchase or course start date, whichever is later for you, so you don't have to worry about it if you don't actually start the course until March, that refund is still available to you. You must have tried all 3 methods to learn. Everybody learns in a different way. So you must have showed me that you've tried the self-paced module, that you've attended at least 1 live session or accessed a recording, and that you've attempted to engage with the workbook page. Also, don't do the whole course and then tell me that you're interested in a refund. So you must have not completed more than 2 modules. So if you want to join us, this is the website to go to so that you can get into our Bringing Nature Inside course. So I hope that you will join us. Oh, I just see that Misty. Oh, Jared and Misty, great. Thank you. You found some shells with small holes in, which are perfect for threading. Absolutely, people do those rock towers. You often see them on beaches, Misty, where children are practicing balance with the rocks, right? The cairns. So now is the time if you want to ask any questions, either about the Bringing Nature Inside course, if you're thinking about that, or about any other natural loose part fine motor that we talked about today. This is the time.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah. So how many live sessions is in the course then?
There are 5 live sessions. So there's a live session that matches each of the self-paced modules. So you can go through it at your own time, but when I do the live sessions, it will be, the live session for setting the stage the first week, the second week. Now I don't remember what I had second. Was it math? Maybe the live session for math will be, so it's in that order. And like I said, all the live sessions will be recorded, so you don't actually have to attend live. I feel just from attending things that if I can attend them live, I do, because I have the opportunity to ask questions. I have the opportunity to be there in person and get what I need out of it. But I also know that being on the West Coast, that a lot of the United States, a lot of workshops are timed for the ease and comfort of people on the East Coast of the United States. And I can't often attend live. And so always look for that when I'm thinking about courses, is do they have an option for me to not attend live, but still get the same material. Yeah, I mean, nature makes great loose parts. So for anything, and I think art and math are the 2 things that that are just really easy to wrap your head around. How am I going to use this for teaching all sorts of math? I mean, definitely sorting, but patterning, measurement, symmetry. There are a lot of pieces of math that that can be used with natural loose parts.
Yeah, and then I want. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Misty.
I just have a quick question for Jared. What kind of on your stringing of your beads and your shells, what kind of string do you use? Do you use like plastic needles? And if not, what do you do at the ends to help the children with that? Because if you use just plain string, it kind of frays, and so I was just wondering what kind he uses or they use.
So Jared should chime in as well, but pipe cleaners work well for me. Is then they can bend the end of it, and there's no tying off. And it's a little bit self-explanatory, but yes, the plastic string for I was thinking of like lanyards. The plastic string for lanyards works well as well, but they can't tie them off themselves. You would have to tie one end and teach the children to use the untied end for threading.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like Jared uses the same exact things that I do. Alina, did you still have a question?
No, it was just a comment because I was trying to think of what activity for the wrist stability with the tiny shells this one's, I don't know, they came in a bag. I found them in a secondhand shops, and there are loads of them, and they're just so beautiful. They're like, I don't know, they look so, they're very polished and they very soft. Anyway, but for the resistability, I was thinking, well, and that coordinates with pincer grasp because it's like it's hard to pick. But if there could be an activity where they would have to draw something on another child's back, and then
Mhm.
the child that is being drawn upon will have to like guess the shape, let's say, something easy. Is it a circle? Is it a triangle? Is it a square? I don't know.
Right.
That was
That's
kind
fun. We didn't talk at all about partner activities, so thank you for
Mhm.
bringing that up. Like I said, I always get good ideas when people share theirs.
Yeah. Well, that's the one that I had to think the most. The other ones, I don't know, maybe like, they're like, more common ones, I suppose. But that one, I was like, okay, that's, I don't know, thought it would be
Yeah,
something
a little
different.
bit out of the box. I like it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, if there are no other questions, I thank you for joining us here today, and I hope to see you inside our course at the end of the month. And enjoy your Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.